Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Mona Bedi here, and today we are going to talk about our second lecture on the respiratory system. And here we have this slide showing the neural control of airways. Now, why is neural control of airways important? First of all, by the neural control, the airway smooth muscle tone can be controlled. The dead space or the air that is contained in the conducting pathways that can be managed. The resistance to airflow can be managed. So as we go forward and we talk about the work of breathing, we will realize that there is something called resistance to airflow which has to be overcome if the lungs have to function properly. And the mechanisms which cause airway smooth muscle contraction and relaxation, and they are very important in understanding airway disease like asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and in their treatment. So the neural control of airways becomes very important here. Now, what is the innovation of the tracheobronchial tree or innovation of the airways? We can divide it into parasympathetic and sympathetic supply. When we talk about the parasympathetic supply, we have the M3 receptors, the cholinergic fibers, and these on activation cause bronchoconstriction. Then there is a non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic pathway also, which now is taught under the parasympathetic system. Earlier, the NANC system, as it is called in short form, was a separate system, but now it is a part of the parasympathetic system. It is inhibitory in nature, and the major neurotransmitters in this system are VIP, that is vasoactive intestinal peptide and nitric oxide. It also has an excitatory component which contains sensory C fibers, substance P, and neurokinin A. Now, coming to the sympathetic system, they are the beta 2 receptors. These on stimulation cause bronchodilation and cause an increase in bronchosecretion. Also, there are certain alpha 1 receptors which may affect the secretions. Now, here, if we go back, the sympathetic system, actually, the receptors for the sympathetic system are very few, and it is mainly the circulating epinephrine and norepinephrine which is going to affect the beta 2 receptors. The innervation per se is more of the parasympathetic system. Besides these, we have certain local factors like histamine, which binds to the H1 receptors and causes bronchoconstriction. When it binds to H2 receptors, it will cause bronchodilation. Then there is something called SRSA, or the slow reactive substance of anaphylaxis, which on release causes bronchoconstriction. And this substance is an important response to allergies. For example, if somebody has allergies to pollen, so that will cause release of SRSA, which in turn will cause bronchoconstriction, and that bronchoconstriction will cause difficulty in breathing, as seen in certain seasonal allergies. Then there is prostaglandin E, which is again a local factor, which on release will cause bronchodilation. Prostaglandin F will cause bronchoconstriction. Now, when we talk about so many different factors affecting the bronchial musculature, we also talk about something called the bronchial tone. Now, what is bronchial tone actually? It is the state of contraction or relaxation of the smooth muscles in the bronchial walls. Now, we all know that when in the last lecture we had seen that the trachea has C-shaped cartilages, it also has some amount of smooth muscle, and because of this, the diameter of the trachea, the bronchi, and the bronchioles keeps changing, and this state of contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscles in the bronchial walls is known as bronchial tone. This regulates the caliber of the airways, that means the diameter of the airways. So whenever there is bronchoconstriction or bronchodilation, these things are actually happening is because of the various neural factors and the local factors which we have just talked about. The bronchial tone expresses the dynamic equilibrium between the inhibitory and excitatory input. So the state of or the diameter or the tone of the bronchi is the bronchial tone is actually a result of the equilibrium between the inhibitory and the excitatory inputs. So this diagram here just shows you how the smooth muscles, when they contract, they cause bronchoconstriction and they decrease the diameter of the airways. So here you can see the tightened muscle and how when the muscle tightens, the alveoli are filled with trapped air. So this is bronchoconstriction, and bronchomotor tone is going to be affected by the bronchoconstriction or bronchodilation. Now, other factors which affect bronchial tone are the circadian or the diurnal variation. Now, whenever you say circadian rhythm, that is a daily rhythm. That means the day and the night as we go, that is a daily rhythm, and many hormones and many other factors are going to be affected by this circadian rhythm. So, diurnal again means night and day. And so, what happens is because of this circadian rhythm, there is a change, circadian variation in the bronchial tone also. Reflex bronchoconstriction can also occur by certain irritants like cigarette smoke, inhaled dust, cold air, noxious gases, and these are all going to act via certain receptors which are known as the irritant receptors. So now here, when we talk about the circadian rhythm and the reflex bronchoconstriction, all these factors become very important in pathological states like asthma. So according to this case, circadian rhythm, the bronchial tone is maximum in the early hours of the morning. So most asthmatic attacks, they happen to occur in the early hours of the morning. Similarly, irritants like cigarette smoke, inhaled dust, cold air, they will all cause bronchoconstriction and they may precipitate asthma in a person who is already prone to this disease. Bronchodilation, while for bronchoconstriction, we have so many factors. For bronchodilation, the main neural bronchodilator is the NANC system, the Nancy system, or the non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic system, which has VIP as its major neurotransmitter. So this is one of the major bronchodilators because we know the sympathetic innervation is very less, and it is only the circulating epinephrine and norepinephrine which are going to um, activate the beta 2 receptor. So NANC, when we talk about the innervation part, it is the non-adrenergic, non-cholinergic innervation which is more important. On the other hand, as you know, as we have just seen, that bronchoconstriction, on the other hand, has many more mechanisms to it. So the bronchoconstriction can occur due to an increase in the vagal tone, due to inflammatory mediators, decrease or impairment of beta receptors, decrease or impairment of M2 receptors, substance P and VIP. So these are the factors which are going to cause bronchoconstriction. So here, this diagram here is just giving you an overview of the airway smooth muscle tone and the factors which affect it. So you see here that you have the humoral factors which like adrenaline and noradrenaline, physical properties of inspired air. For example, if the inspired air is cold, that may initiate an asthmatic attack that will cause bronchial constriction. Then you have the vagus nerve, which we've already talked about, and so as also we have talked about the locally released mediators. So this again can come as a short note. You may have a short note on bronchial tone. You may be asked in Viva, or you may also be asked, given a short note about the neural regulation of the tracheobronchial tree. So next we come to pulmonary circulation. Now we won't be doing pulmonary circulation in much detail, but we will be talking about only stuff which is of physiological importance. Now here the lungs are slightly unique that they have two circulations in the lung. We have a pulmonary circulation and a bronchial circulation. Now, the pulmonary circulation arises from the right ventricle. It receives 100% of the cardiac output or the blood flow, while the bronchial circulation is a part of the systemic circulation. So, as you know, there are two types of circulations in the body. We have a pulmonary circulation and the systemic circulation. The pulmonary circulation is a closed circuit, which is again it is arising from the right ventricle, that is the main source of blood supply to the lungs, while the bronchial circulation is the circulation which is the supplying the tracheobronchial tree, and this is a part of the systemic circulation. So when we talk about the systemic circulation, we talk about the main circulatory vessels like the superior and inferior vena cava and the aorta, which are going and supplying whole of the body. So this diagram here is showing you both the pulmonary and the bronchial blood supply. You can see how they run together and how the bronchial circulation is supplying the bronchi, etc., while the pulmonary circulation is important because the capillaries here, the pulmonary capillaries here are surrounding the alveoli, and it is into these vessels, into these capillaries that the gas exchange occurs. So the oxygen intake and the carbon dioxide, when it is expelled, it is via the pulmonary circulation only. So the pulmonary circulation is that part of the cardiovascular system that carries the deoxygenated blood away from the heart to the lungs and oxygen-rich blood back to the heart. So the pulmonary circulation becomes extremely important because it is a low pressure, high capacitance system. It has got a high volume because the whole of the cardiac output is going through the pulmonary circulation, which as compared to the systemic circulation is a smaller circulation if you study about it, but again the importance is huge. So here you can see how the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit are interrelated. If you, I mean, all of you should be knowing this at this point of time, and it is important that I always repeat in the respiratory system that the pulmonary and the cardiovascular systems have to work hand in hand to provide oxygen and take out the carbon dioxide from the body. So here you can see the pulmonary system here is a smaller system as compared to the huge systemic system. So, and another feature of the pulmonary circulation here is that the pulmonary arteries here are carrying deoxygenated blood, while the pulmonary veins are carrying oxygenated blood. So in the pulmonary capillary beds, oxygen moves into the blood and carbon dioxide leaves. And here you can see the oxygenated blood is going and is being distributed throughout the systemic tissues on the in the systemic circuit. And in the systemic capillary beds, the oxygen leaves the blood and carbon dioxide enters, so it is somewhat opposite. And again, from the systemic tissues, on the tissues, the deoxygenated blood is being carried here by the vena cava. It is going inside the right side of the heart, and from there, the pulmonary arteries are carrying the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, where it gets oxygenated, and the oxygenated blood is now leaving by the pulmonary veins. So this diagram here is important because it is showing you how the pulmonary and the systemic circuits, they work hand in hand, and how the oxygenated and the deoxygenated blood is circulated throughout the body. Again, to simplify the earlier diagram, you can just see how the blood flow is occurring from the right ventricle to the pulmonary artery, the pulmonary arterioles, the pulmonary capillaries. Now, these pulmonary capillaries are surrounding the alveoli, and they are part of the respiratory membrane also. And from here, you see they go to the pulmonary venules, the pulmonary veins, which is carrying again the oxygenated blood to the left side of the heart, which in turn is now going to pump this oxygenated blood. Now you can see the red is the oxygenated and the blue is the deoxygenated. So the left side of the heart is going to pump this oxygenated blood throughout the body and supply oxygen to the tissues. Now the lungs are in series with right and left heart. Now that is an important feature. You should be knowing that. Pulmonary. So here, what we are doing is we are just repeating what I've already told you, and these are the key features of the pulmonary circulation. So if you sometimes you have to write in short, or you have a short note, or for now in the exams, or you also have long questions which are structured type. So you may be having a question, a long question in which a small part is about the pulmonary circulation, where you have to just talk about the key features or the salient features of the pulmonary circulation. So the lungs are in series with the right and the left heart. The pulmonary arteries carry deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood. Pulmonary capillaries lie in the alveolar septa. I keep repeating the pulmonary circulation. So here we are not simply talking about the bronchial circulation at all, because the bronchial circulation is, as the name suggests, from the bronchi, and it is going to supply nutrition to the airways. That is nothing to do with the pulmonary circulation. So the pulmonary capillaries are the capillaries which are actually involved in gas exchange, and they are lying in the alveolar septa, where the gas exchange, the diffusion of gases is occurring. Pulmonary veins drain into the left atrium. Pressures in the pulmonary circuit are much less than those in the systemic circuit, which we are going to see just now. So you can just see the differences in the table, which we'll be showing you later. Yes, now this diagram is again very important. So, because I like to point out what importance is there of the diagrammatic representation of an answer. So, the diagram should be simple, easy to represent, comprehend for the examiner, and you should be supporting most of your answers with diagrams. So, this here is showing the systemic and the pulmonary circulations. Now, as I just said, the pulmonary capillaries or the pulmonary system or the pulmonary circulation is a low pressure system. So, if you compare the pressures on the right side of the heart, you have a pressure of 25/0, while the left ventricle pressure is 120. So, the systemic pressure is much higher. The right atrium is 2 mmHg, while the left atrium is 5 mmHg. So if you see the pressures, they are quite different on both sides. Even the capillary pressures are different if you compare. So the mean pressure on the pulmonary circuit is 15 mmHg, while the mean pressure on the systemic side is 100 mmHg. So that means if you see the pressure as such, 120/80 is the systemic pressure, which you already know is the general average blood pressure of a normal young adult, while the pulmonary pressure is 25/8. So it is a low pressure system. So that is one of the important differences between these two. So if you see the salient features of the pulmonary circulation, it is a low pressure, low resistance system. Now, why low resistance? Because we need a lot of blood to pass through the whole pulmonary system. Now, if you see the cardiac output of 5 liters, which is going through the whole of the systemic circulation, again, which is huge. And the same 5 liters is also passing through the pulmonary system. So it has a very high capacity or low resistance. So it acts as a volume reservoir. So it is a distensible pulmonary reservoir, the pulmonary circulation, which again is very helpful for the body. And the pressures and the flow, as you know, are quite different from that of systemic circulation. So maybe under these three headings, you can write a short note about pulmonary circulation. The pulmonary circulation is in series with the systemic circulation. It contains 600 ml of blood at rest. Though if the 100% of cardiac output is going to pass through it, there are around 280 billion capillaries supplying 300 million alveoli, and the surface area for gas exchange is around 50 to 100 square meter, which I have already told you. It's around the size of a small football field. Around average is 70 square meters. Okay, now this table here, though it may not be asked, but you should be knowing that how, if you ask to compare the pulmonary and the systemic circulations. So the pulmonary circulation, first of all, we'll see how the content of smooth muscle. So it is less in the pulmonary vasculature as compared to the systemic vasculature, and that is one reason why the pulmonary setup is a low pressure, high compliance system, which acts as a reservoir of blood. On the other hand, the systemic circulation, the aorta and etc., they have a huge amount of smooth muscle, and it is a high pressure system. And again, because we call it a high pressure, you can know that it is 120 by 80 mmHg is the pressure in the systemic, average pressure in the systemic, on the systemic side, while on the pulmonary side it is 25 by 8 mmHg. The vascular resistance is 14 times less on the pulmonary side as compared to the systemic side, and the capillary pressures also here are 10 mmHg on the arterial end as compared to 30 mmHg on the arterial end in the systemic side, and 6 on the venous end as compared to 10 mmHg on the venous side in the systemic capillary. So this is a small compare and contrast. If you have a question like that, you can compare the pulmonary and the systemic circulations. A few words about the bronchial circulation. Now, the bronchial circulation, here you need to know that it is not a part of the pulmonary circulation, it is a part of the systemic circulation, so it is arising from the aorta. It receives 2% of the ventricular output, and it is, again, you see it is different. So the important part, it is part of the systemic circulation, so the pressures here will also be according to the systemic circulation. So the bronchial, if you compare the bronchial and the pulmonary circulation, the bronchial circulation is arising from the descending thoracic aorta, which is the systemic circulation. The pulmonary, on the other hand, is arising from the right ventricle. The bronchial circulation carries oxygenated blood, while the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. The bronchial circulation is till the terminal bronchioles, and its main function is nutrition, humidification, and warming of air. On the other hand, the main function of the pulmonary circulation, which supplies the airways from the terminal bronchiole onwards. So till the terminal bronchioles, that means till the conducting pathways are there, the supply is by the bronchial circulation, and that is why the function of nutrition, humidification, and warming of air, which are also functions of the conducting pathway, are taken care of by the bronchial vessels, while the main function of the pulmonary vasculature will be gas exchange, which is a hugely important function because it is going to surround the alveoli. I keep repeating this so that you do not get confused. So here we finish our the neural control of the tracheobronchial tree and the pulmonary and the bronchial circulations. Now, another long question which comes to you is of the non-respiratory functions of the lungs. Now, if you see till now, we have been talking about the respiratory functions of the lung, that is taking enough oxygen and giving out of carbon dioxide. So that is important. But besides that, you get a long question also sometimes about the non-respiratory functions of the lung, which is given in most of the books. So here we'll be just quickly going through it so that you can just do some active learning and read it on your own and maybe write a long answer if a question comes like this. Now, non-respiratory functions can be divided under 3 headings: lung defense, functions of the pulmonary circulation, and metabolic and endocrine functions. Now, again, very important. These are the non-respiratory functions. Do not write the respiratory functions in this answer, please. So, lung defense mechanisms. When we were talking about the structure and the physiological anatomy of the lungs, we had mentioned some lung defense mechanisms. So, we are all just going to recapitulate it here. We can divide it under the functions of the airways. Again, the functions of the conducting pathways. I'll quickly go through this. Humidification of air, cooling or warming of air, secretion of mucin, defensins, tumor necrosis factor, immunoglobulins, interleukins, and protection against foreign bodies with the help of nasal hair, the cilia in the pseudostratified columnar ciliated epithelium, the cuff reflex, the pulmonary alveolar macrophages. So this all we have done in the first class. So these are all functions of the conducting pathways also, because here we have mentioned functions of airway. So you can see these are the common functions and they come under lung defense mechanisms. So this diagram here, I think I've shown you earlier. So the cilia, the importance of the cilia, how the macrophages are engulfing the bacteria, how the goblet cells are secreting mucus, and this mucus is entrapping all the foreign particles, and this is going to be cuffed up with the help of this mucus and the ciliary movement, and hence help in defense. So here you can just see in a diagram where again the importance of diagram. So you can see how each part is going to help in host defense. So we have the mucus, the angulation of the airways, the mucociliary clearance, even the use of surfactant. Then you have opsonins, complement, alveolar macrophage system, the neutrophils, all of them are going to help and prevent the bacteria and the inhaled pollutants from actually harming the airways. So again, this is a recapitulation. So here I've just also mentioned this in the earlier diagram, the surfactant, opsonins. Opsonins are substances which make the bacteria tasty for the macrophages to engulf. So opsonins, the complement system, the pulmonary alveolar macrophages, and the neutrophils. Now, a few lines about the pulmonary alveolar macrophages. They are also known as dust cells. They are actively phagocytic in nature. You know, they are macrophages, so they will phagocytose, and they arise from the bone marrow. They also secrete opsonins or substances that attract the white blood cells to the lung, and they release an enzyme known as elastase, which increases in emphysema, and this will cause, this is also seen in chronic cigarette smokers. They also release lysosomal products, which may cause inflammation. Now, the second category of non-respiratory functions are functions of the pulmonary circulation. Again, there'll be a lot of repetition here, as you know that it is a low pressure system and high capacitance, so it acts as a reservoir for the left ventricular outflow. It also acts as a filter for clots, cells, fats, and RBCs. It helps in fluid exchange, which we'll be seeing later, and thus helps keep the alveoli dry. So the pressures, the Starling forces here are such that they bring out fluid, they suck away fluid from the alveoli, and the alveoli are dry. And why do we need to keep the alveoli dry? You already know the respiratory membrane is a very thin membrane, 0.5 microns maybe, 0.3 microns maybe. So if you have a fluid lining the inside of the alveoli, that will make it difficult for diffusion of gases. तो अगर आपकी alveolus membrane thick हो जाती है और अंदर fluid आ जाता है तो आपका gas exchange मुश्किल से होता है. तो ये भी हमारा, this becomes a very important function of the pulmonary circulation. Drug absorption, बहुत सारी ऐसी drugs हैं like anesthetic gases, aerosols, which are absorbed by the pulmonary circulation and hence helpful for the body. Again, a repeat diagram which you should all know and remember. And the last non-respiratory function of the lungs are the metabolic or the endocrine functions. सबसे बड़ा important, आपको सबको पता है, you have been doing it since school, the synthesis of surfactant. Now surfactant is secreted from the type 2 cells, the type 2 pneumocytes, which we have done in the first class, and this surfactant has a huge amount of बहुत सारे इसके important functions हैं. सबसे important function है that it decreases the surface tension. So when it decreases the surface tension, it will prevent collapse of the alveoli. We will talk about it in detail later. Synthesis of storage of certain chemicals like prostaglandin, histamines, and kallikreins. Removal by inactivation or alteration certain substances like prostaglandins, bradykinin, serotonin, norepinephrine, acetylcholine. ये सब चीजें they can be removed. If in excess, they can be removed by the pulmonary circulation. Activation. Now ये बहुत ही important function है इसका, because here a very important enzyme, that is angiotensin converting enzyme, जिसको हम ACE भी बोलते हैं, that is being secreted and that converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. Now angiotensin is a vasoconstrictor और इसके और भी बहुत सारे functions होते हैं which we will be doing later. Then it also the pulmonary circulation is also providing passage to substances like dopamine, oxytocin. It also stores certain substances in cells which are the APUD cells, जैसे VIP, substance P, opioids. फिब्रोनेलिटिक सिस्टम होता है इसमें एक जो क्लॉट्स को लाइज करता है. सो अगर हमारी बॉडी में सम क्लॉट्स आर बीइंग रिलीज फ्रॉम समवेयर एंड दोस क्लॉट्स कैन हार्म द बॉडी बाय being they can just go and clog certain vessels and उसकी वजह से बहुत problems हो सकती हैं. So there is a fibrinolytic system in the pulmonary circulation which is going to uh, even in the lung parenchyma also, which will help lyse the clots. A rich source of heparin. Heparin again is an anticoagulant. Again, you can just imagine the importance of this. So ये डायग्राम यहाँ पे आपको RAS सिस्टम का बता रहे हैं जो हम बार बार करेंगे, कभी किडनी में, कभी एंडोक्रिनोलॉजी में. So here is the this is because this is one of the very important functions of the lungs, non-respiratory function. So if you see the liver में से आपका angiotensin आता है. The kidney secretes renin, which converts angiotensin to angiotensin 1. And the ACE enzyme, the angiotensin converting enzyme, is being released from the lungs, which is converting angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, which finally is going to act at its effector organs. So, some applied aspects. So if you see here, certain defects in the mucociliary escalator function may cause problems, which is one of the diseases known as primary ciliary dyskinesia, where the cilia don't function properly. It can also happen due to prolonged smoking or cigarette smoke, dust and pollution, chronic respiratory diseases, change in character of mucus, and low humidity as in aircrafts. So ये सब चीजें आपका ciliary function को problem कर सकती हैं, and if the ciliary function is not good enough, the protective function of the lungs will be hampered. So there is something in applied, there's something called the Cartagena syndrome or the ciliary dysmotility syndrome, where there are three types of things are happening: situs inversus, bronchiectasis, and sinusitis. So situs inversus means the organs of the body are in opposite on the opposite side. There is bronchiectasis and sinusitis. And here, because there is ciliary dysmotility, this may lead to chronic infection and death. Then secondly, you have certain occupational lung diseases like silicosis and asbestosis. Especially जो लोग सिलिकॉन की फैक्ट्री में काम करते हैं या जहाँ asbestos sheets बनती हैं वहाँ काम करते हैं, there's very fine particles are being released, and these fine particles go and embed inside the lungs, and that leads to occupational lung diseases, causing a lot of problems, which details of which are not required right now, but all you need to know is that these very fine dust-like particles are going to be engulfed by the macrophages, and there is going to be fibrosis in the lungs which is going to occur, which will hamper the proper functioning of the lungs. Cystic fibrosis is there, which is autosomal recessive disease. Details not required, but you just need to know that this is one condition which occurs, which there is a mutation in the gene for cystic fibrosis and defect in mucociliary clearance. Basically, frequent lung infections, thick mucus, difficulty in breathing. So I again repeat, I've just put in this slide for information. Otherwise, just naming cystic fibrosis is more than enough for you. Nobody is going to ask you the details here. Okay, and the last thing here is the applied part. Again, we talk about sputum. So when you ask a person कि sputum बनता है कि नहीं, तो उसमें क्या होता है? What is sputum? It is basically expectorated or cuffed up mucus. उसके अंदर कुछ प्रोटीन्स, कुछ लिपिड्स, इलेक्ट्रोलाइट्स, कैल्शियम, डीएनए फ्रॉम degenerated WBCs, nuclei and extra bronchial secretion. So ये सारी चीजें मिलके साथ में आपका whatever foreign particles are there which have been engulfed in the mucus, that all comes out as sputum. Color of the sputum can give an idea of the type of infection. हम जैसे पूछते हैं कि आपकी बलगम पीली है या बलगम हरी है. So what does that mean? If it is yellow or green in color, that means some infection is there, and that is a very common symptom of infection. Okay, so that was all for today. So next time we start with mechanics of breathing. Thank you.